Well, every year in AFL football, various individuals rise above the average, their stories being part of the fabric of the season. Whether it be on the field or off it, individual stories make up the year. And tonight, as we wind down 2022 on Sports Day, we kick off the show by looking at some of the great individual stories of the year to finally name which person is the AFL's story of the season. Let's begin with a couple of young guns. Two were exceptional. Nick Daicos and Sam De Koning, clearly totally different players, but their transformational influence on their teams at such a young age this year stood out to me. Daicos was a revelation with the ball. His decision-making and skill was extraordinary. And the amount of times he got it broke all records, playing all Australian level footy for much of the year. De Koning, well, he was a slightly slower burn early, but the longer the season progressed, the more exceptional his performances became. To hold down a key defensive position at such a young age, at such a high level, right through to a standout grand final performance, was a serious highlight of this season. Another inexperienced defender, albeit a bit older, Paddy McCartan, was one of the great stories, one of the feel-good stories of the season, reigniting his career at the Sydney Swans. Then, of course, there was the inspirational year of Paddy Cripps, who 12 months earlier looked slow and workmanlike, no doubt incapacitated to a large degree by injury. He rose to a performance and leadership level that was at times superhuman. Surely next year he leads the Blues into the finals. And then there were three veterans down at Geelong. Tom Hawkins, who at 34 years of age produced an incredible year for the Cats and was All-Australian captain at full forward. Patrick Dangerfield, he finally got his maiden flag with a near-perfect grand final performance, which elevated him, in my mind, to consideration for the footballing story of the year. And of course, there's the outgoing captain, Joel Selwood. What more can you say? But his grand final story will live on. The Geelong flavour continues with Steve Hocking, a worthy nominee. First-year CEO at Geelong after a stint with the AFL, he gets a flag with a club that exploited the rules that he actually introduced better than any. But the person who was at the helm of that team that defied conventional wisdom, who fought back from a prelim final loss the year before by 80-plus points, that looked at the time like it was a seminal moment in the club's history, an empire-ending moment, who twisted and tweaked the way the ball was moved and the velocity of its conveyance in 2022, who took a gamble on a tall, lanky young defender, who plonked him at full back at the start of the season and simply had faith, like he did another, who finally blossomed after many years of frustration, who tactically implemented 3 or 4 positional changes with the same personnel to get more bang for the Cardinia Park buck, and formulated a strategy for a one-time steeplechaser that underpinned their success and saw him finally recognised as an All-Australian, a coach who wore the brick bats from all and sundry over a decade of frustration, since his first flag in 2011, being so close so often but not quite getting there, who's been hardly heard of or cited since. Well, he is my footballing story of the year. John Longmire and Craig McRae, I've got to say, were close. But Chris Scott, the premiership coach of the Cats, is clearly, in my mind, football's story of 2022.
You gave us a good cross-section there, Jared. It's hard to disagree with Chris Scott. We've discussed him at length and whether he gets the plaudits that he deserves, and to look at what he did with the team that he had at his disposal and the way that he carried himself with an air of confidence about him, but also, every time he speaks, he captivates the audience that he's speaking to. It was a remarkable premiership. For me, it would be Joel Selwood. I thought that he was the footballing story for me of this year, and the selfless way that he has led for so long, and just the relentlessness that he's played at for so long. I mean, just his will to not want to ever be beaten. He's the most competitive player I've ever seen. He's the toughest player I've ever seen, and he's probably the best captain I've ever seen. So to see him go out like that, he was my footballing person of the year. 1300 736 736 is the Harcourts open line. Let me just grill you a little bit more on Chris Scott. Where does he now rank in terms of the coaches that you've seen, the pressure he's been under to get a second premiership, 10 years on from the first one when everyone said it wasn't his team?
Well, there's a multiplier effect. I mean, I think that was always a bit harsh. In fact, I thought it was really unfair, the first one not being his premiership. I think everybody knows every year you start again. Every coach this year will say, well, we start again. I mean, all you can do is take the players that you've got to the promised land, and if you get it there in your first year or your fifth year, they're all the same. But there is definitely a multiplier effect. 2 premierships is more than just twice as good as 1 premiership, if you know what I mean.
I do.
If you look at the amount of people that have won 1 premiership, it's a whatever number it is, but there's a significantly, there's not half as many again win 2. And then to get 3, well, you're up in the stratosphere, and to get 4 like a few have, I think there's only about 4 or 5 that have done it in the history of the game. So where does he rate? Well, his win-loss record at 70+% is the best of anybody's. So he knows as well as anybody that he gets judged by premiership glory, which is unfair in many respects, but seems as if them's the rules. I mean, you've got guys like Rodney Eade, who are an unbelievable coach, who's been an unbelievable coach, hasn't quite got there. Ken Hinkley is another one who's been an unbelievable coach, been up there a lot of times,
Ross Lyon.
hasn't
Nathan
quite got
Buckley
there.
was a
Ross
good
Lyon,
coach.
I mean, Ross Lyon. He's been, he was stiff. I told you that free kick that wasn't paid. That had to have been paid. The grabbing of the jumper, who was it of? Former Swans player. Anyway, his name escapes me. And the twisting, turning of that Sharon, robbed by a.
I watched that again yesterday. Someone posted it on social media, and I don't know. I reckon Milne could have. I reckon Milne could have got it if he just had. I know he was.
Stay down lower.
Yeah, he just had to almost. Maybe the camera angle makes the ball look a little bit closer, but if he was really determined to get it, I think he could. But he was anticipating it to bounce a different way, and sometimes the ball doesn't. So yeah, Ross Lyon's a great one, but we'd love for you to get involved. We've got lines available, 1300 736 736. There's many, and how can you split, Sam Doherty's season, Jared? I mean, just how inspirational that was.
Yeah.
Michael Voss galvanising.
I've written down 1 or 2 for each club. Adelaide, I reckon it's probably Tex. I think he got back to an incredible level this year when he was, in all sorts of trouble last year.
Mate.
Yeah, your mate. Brisbane, probably Lockie Neal. Just, another incredible season. Michael Voss for me at the Blues. I know they didn't make the finals, but I thought he transformed that particular club. Craig McRae at Collingwood. I reckon Peter Wright at Essendon finally got to the level
Best and
required.
fairest.
Hard to go past Brayshaw at Freo. I didn't have anybody for the Giants. If you can pull one out for me, that'd be good. We've said the catch. Gold Coast, I reckon Noah Anderson. He jumped up to top line level. I think Clayton Oliver was a clear winner at the Demons.
Well, I'm glad you say that, because we had a text message come through and said, Jared, Oliver won the Coaches Award for the 2nd year in a row.
Yep.
Gary Ablett is the only other multiple winner. How about some credit? I got to defend you, though. Last night you said, or the night before, you said Clayton Oliver was your tip for the best player in the competition last year. So I will defend you on that.
Yeah,
text
I mean,
message
whether or
coming
not
through.
he's the story of the year, I don't think anybody at Melbourne was the story of the year, just because I think they underperformed as a team. I mean, Clayton Oliver certainly didn't. He's just one of the great midfielders that we've seen come through. I reckon Sonia Hood at North Melbourne.
Interesting.
Port Adelaide. I love Ken Hinkley's effort. When you're 0-5, to hold that club together, he won't be heralded as being one of the stories of the year,
No.
but I thought he was. But Connor Rozee, as a player, he went up to becoming the player that you thought he was going to be.
Yeah, and I liked the ending for Robbie Gray as well. Just as a sensational player. And his last game was in a showdown, which Port Adelaide won comfortably. And the send-off for him, I thought, was reflective of the send-off that he deserved.
Tom Lynch at the Tigers,
Yeah.
probably his best season, maybe not ever, but certainly equal best. St Kilda, well, hard to find. Ross Lyon's almost the story of the year for them, but let's go with Sinclair. He got himself an All-Australian and a best and fairest. Sydney Swans is interesting. If Paddy McCartan was just one of the great stories, but so too was John Longmire. His effort to elevate that club to a grand final was
Buddy's
superb.
1000th was pretty good as well.
Buddy's
that will never
thousands
happen
was the
again.
individual moment of the year. In
Yeah.
fact, it was one of the individual moments this century. I was there that night. It was just an incredible. The atmosphere was just electric, and I mean to see that 3 waves of humankind spill out onto the ground and not to have not one problem was a testament to, I guess, a bit of luck, but also the good grace of that particular moment.
Yep.
And I got one more. Tom Barras for the West Coast Eagles. And I struggle for the Bulldogs. Who did you have for the Bulldogs? Who was their story of the... It may be English.
Well, Sam, look, for a player who only played a handful of games, Sam Darcy and projecting forward of what he can do, and the father-son, and he went forward in that game, I think it was in Tassie, and sort of turned it on his head. So just the excitement of that for me. I love watching Bontempelli play. It wasn't his greatest year, and so probably was hard to find one for the Dogs. If you've got one, let us know. A lot of texts coming through. You skipped the Hawks, Jared. Dylan Moore had a good year.
No, I would have given it to
John Newcombe.
Yeah, both of those young players are excellent. I did skip the Hawks. I must have blinked when I was writing them down from the. I like Sam Mitchell. I think Sam Mitchell was one of the stories of the year, taking over as a first-year club and keeping it together and winning 8 games. I thought that was really impressive.
Yeah, I agree with that. Brett, I saw your text message related to Tex. I had a laugh at it. I won't read it out, but I appreciate your humour. It was in good nature. Feel-good story of the year. Ben Cunnington coming back from cancer was huge, says Ryan. Hard to disagree with that. Ryan, this one, Chris Scott succeeded in doing the one thing that all of us strive for and struggle with each day. He changed, he innovated, he adapted and ultimately overcame, said Ash.